Yo! Welcome back to One More Mana. My name is Derek, and today we are getting right back into the deck doctoring series. I'm really excited about today, but before we get started, this deck is going to have some awesome cards. You won't want to build part of it, all of it, or as always, just buy all the Infect cards ever printed. And if so, please go down to the affiliate link in the description. It's our affiliate link with TCG Player. TCG Player is amazing. You'll be able to find all these cards on there. So please go check it out. Any cards you buy with that link will go ahead and support the channel, help us make more content, better content. We really, really appreciate the help. But like I mentioned, today's deck doctor is something I'm super, super excited about. It's one of our patrons, Will Solomon. We're looking at one of his decks that he submitted. It's an Artifact Stormy deck, and originally it was with Verena, the zombie lady. But he decided to switch it up, and it's something I'm kind of excited about because one of the newer commanders, it's Alela. Now, Alela is an awesome little fairy person. She is 1 in Esper, and first of all, she has flying, death touch, lifelink. Not going to be super, there's not going to matter too much for what we're doing with the deck, but it is there. She also buffs all of your flyers, so they all get +1/+0, which can be, that can be important. But most importantly to us, whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment, you get a 1/1 fairy. Now, it's not the focus of the deck, but it does make for some awesome benefits to how we're going to go ahead and win games. So we'll get to that in a little bit, exactly how it's going to factor in. But there are some things I want to kind of address about the overall deck before we get into the specifics, look at specific cards, see how we go ahead and doctor it up. Obviously, overall prognosis, this deck looks very healthy. Now, there are some areas that it is a little malnourished. We'll get into that probably at the very end, that it does need a little bit of those veggies a little bit. But in general, I can tell you put a ton of time and thought into this deck, or at least it seems so, because you have everything you need there. Really, all the important stuff, like I said, it's just missing some of those veggies that I want to go ahead, add to the diet to get it a little bit healthier. So the deck looks awesome. Now, there are a number of ways to take Alela, and there's just so many different options. You can, like I said, you can do a Voltron, Aura, just Enchantress in general, or in this case, an artifact. You can go Artifact Value, Artifact Storm. Obviously, I didn't want to take it in a different direction from what you had. I wanted to go ahead in line with what you were talking about, what the deck looked like, looking at the deck list, and have that Artifact Stormy kind of win con with it. Now, if you are interested in any of the other directions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Just will definitely let me know. Be happy to give some advice on that as well. But for this deck list, now, there's a number of things that go into it. One, the first thing, because it is going to be a Storm deck, Storm can be very threatening. Storm can be the type of thing where if I know someone is playing Storm at the table, I will try to take them out first because it can go off out of nowhere. And that's why I was using the term Stormy before, because the way I see this deck running and being built on a Storm scale, and I'm going to use my own personal, take this on a patent or whatever, this is my Storm scale. I'm going to steal the Hurricane scale. I'm from Florida, that's how it works. I see the super competitive, like CEDH type of Storm decks, like that's a category 5 Hurricane. That is just craziness. The way I see this deck, kind of its happy spot is going to be more of a Tropical Storm, maybe pushing a category 1, and it has nothing to do with the power level necessarily, if it's going to be able to win or if it's how good it is, none of that. That's just how stormy it's going to be. Because when you get to those category 3, 4, 5 Storms, nobody else at the table wants that there. They're going to make sure they can do what they can to get it out of the way and take that player out. Alela seems super cool. Now, I haven't seen many artifact decks with her, and maybe I'm wrong, and this could potentially change, but there are some commanders that are just way more powerful competitive-wise that are going to storm off much easier. So because that's the case, you want to avoid certain things that are going to make you too much of a target. Whereas certain Storm decks are just going to go off so fast, it doesn't matter if the table is targeting them. This is going to be more of a little bit of a slow burn, and that's not a bad thing. It can make for much more fun games than some Storm decks allow because they try to just blow things up so fast. But because of that, you don't want to make yourself a massive target too early. Now, as I'm going through categories, normally I don't mention cuts so much, but as I'm going through card categories, I might mention a cut or two just to emphasize this point of you don't want to make yourself too scary in this deck. You want to be able to do your thing, everybody's doing their thing, you're making little fairies, and then you go off at a certain point, but not, turn 4, I've dropped 50 artifacts, everybody's got to watch out. Because the commander itself doesn't necessarily give you those engines to storm off like others, maybe like a Joyra might. So I'll mention that as we go throughout the video. So I want to start with the artifacts. Now, the artifacts you put in here are exactly what you want. Now, I love it. It's a bunch of low drop artifacts that fill categories you need. You have tons of ramp with signets and all those type of things like that. And then you also have the low drops that you can sack for value. So it's maybe 1 or 0 mana to play something, and then you can pay a small amount of mana, sack it, maybe draw a card, maybe add a mana. So you get cards that replace themselves, get the cast triggers, get the artifacts out. That is amazing. It is exactly what you're looking for. So there really wasn't much work to do with the artifacts. There are a few that I really did need to add, though. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Biden of Thassa. Now, this card is just phenomenal in any deck where you're going to have flyers because you can just get so much card draw. You had mentioned in the original message, Will, that in Verena you were having some trouble with card draw. I don't know if it was the same with Alela, but you can never have too much card draw. And with the way I see this deck functioning, mentioning this card draw, a lot of Storm decks are reliant on being able to basically just cantrip or play cards, get cards, play cards, get cards, and that's why stuff like Jorian or Joyra are very good in those type of decks. In this deck, I almost see it in a weird way where you're going to have an explosive turn where just getting incremental card draw and just being able to just drop everything is a cool way to do it. It's a little bit different from how typical Storm works, but I can see it could be a lot of fun like that. And this is the perfect card for that. With Alela, you can drop a bunch of those 0/1 drops in a turn, make a bunch of fairies. If you drop Biden of Thassa, all of a sudden you swing with them, get a ton of card draw, and just be able to drop more, and all of a sudden stuff gets out of control with these fairies because you're swinging in, drawing cards, dropping all these artifacts. And yeah, stuff spirals out of control. So Biden of Thassa is a phenomenal card in this deck, not to mention it's also an artifact. So great card draw card, synergizes great with our commander, and this is the type of card draw engine that it can get you into situations to win the game by itself. The next one I'm going to mention is Oblivion Stone. Now, one thing I did notice with the original deck list is it was super low on board wipes. I don't really know if I saw any board wipes, and board wipes are so important now, especially destroying. Now, this one is kind of destroy everything. It's kind of just the nuke button. Sometimes every deck needs some backup plan just in case stuff is not going as planned. Now, if the goal is really to just win super competitively, again, I don't know if Alela is the commander for that, but that's really the only time you wouldn't want to board wipe. In Commander, stuff always gets out of control. You could even be playing, even in super competitive decks, I feel like board wipe backup is something you'd want. At least I feel like I always want that because even if you're trying to go off fast, there might be someone who starts going off faster, and you want to be able to just hit a hard reset just in case so you can slow things down for the other person and get things back. O-Stone is a great thing. Just because it is an artifact, you can save a couple key pieces and just wipe the board should you need it. Now, I didn't go super heavy on board wipes because, one, you're playing a lot of tokens because you're commander, and you want to have all these artifacts out. So board wiping isn't in your best interest, but you still need you need at least a couple board wipes in there just for certain situations. And then the third artifact is the first card I added. You may just hear about this again in those top prescriptions, the top things I'm going to prescribe to you, and it is Sensei's Divining Top. I know this is an expensive card, so if that's the reason you didn't include it, then I completely understand. But in this deck, it is just ridiculous. It almost fills that pseudo card draw role because you get card selection. Technically, you can draw a card with it. But the way it combos with Bolas' Citadel, that will essentially storm off for you, get the Aether Flux, and win the game. So this is a must include. Again, obviously, for price reasons, I completely understand. That's the reason it's not in there. But we might just hear about this card in a little bit more later. Now, looking at the enchantments, these 3 enchantments, I realize this is more of an artifact-based deck, but you still do get triggers for enchantments, so there were a few I just had to add. Mystic Remore and Mystic Study are just such good card draw engines. And again, in this deck, like I said, for a deck like this, being able to just build up cards in hand and just drop them, I see as a great way as opposed to the normal cantrip, this storm. Because a lot of time with storms, you get the whole... They're very instant sorcery based in a sense where you're doing like the cantrips and then you're just untapping and then you find these ridiculous combos. Now, in this case, I really do think just gathering card advantage, gathering cards in hand, and then dropping them to make little armies of these flyers are going to be a great way to get in damage and essentially do stuff when you don't have access yet to that Aether Flux or to that Bolas' Citadel. It's just a great way to have basically just big turns and make big moves during the game. So these are just great cards to just collect cards. Essentially, with the Ristic, you're just going to keep drawing. Or Mystic Remore, just keep drawing. And because you have so many low drops, you really, even if you don't have no maximum hand size card, that doesn't matter because there's so many low drops. You can just drop everything, get all that value from it. Yeah, card draw, even in a deck that is playing a little bigger and trying to play fast, card draw is so important in Commander because so many games do go long, and these are 2 of the best cards for it. And this last one is, I said I wasn't going to go too far in any other directions, like tokens or Enchantress or anything, but this card is just too good to pass up, and it is Hathors Crusade. Oh my gosh, this card is amazing, and especially in this deck. Just imagine if you get a handful of a bunch of 1/0 2-drop artifacts with your commander out, and you're able just to just drop 4, 5, 6 of them. All of a sudden, you have a bunch of massive fairies, and you're essentially in a circumstance where if someone doesn't board wipe, they're dead. This is an insane card, not to mention you get the commander trigger. Anyway, yeah, I didn't want to go too heavy in enchantments, but this card is just too powerful, even without focusing on the tokens of your commander. This by itself can serve as a win con, the way you're just basically just pooping out these artifacts and getting these fairies, just some real big buff fairies just beating people up, and I'm all about that. Looking at the creatures, there's two really noticeable ones I really wanted to add, and we're basically just looking like this, just card draw, card draw, card draw. You can never have enough card draw in this deck because you have so many low drops. Mentor of the Meek is going to be phenomenal because you're making so many 1/1 fairies that every time one enters, if you could just go ahead and pay one, draw a card, stuff can get out of hand. You're going to have access to lots of mana. We'll get to that in a second. Plus, you have all the ramp with your artifacts. It's just, yeah, you're going to have access to mana. And because everything is so cheap, sometimes you won't have enough to spend it on. And this is a great little mana sink when you're getting these fairies to just draw up, refill your hand, and this can lead to some crazy explosive turns. If I didn't say card draw enough, there's another one that I just love in this deck, and it is going to be Consecrated Sphinx. I'm sorry, this isn't as creative as anything. It seems like a very just basic card, but Consecrated Sphinx in this deck is just ridiculous. It's that same kind of concept where in a lot of decks, when you draw up to maximum hand size, you have so many cards, you can't play them all. In this deck, because it is so low to the ground, the Consecrated Sphinx, if you end up with 10 cards in hand, it's so easy for you to drop half of that like it's nothing, get a whole bunch of fairies out of it, and then pick up that storm count if you do have that Aether Flux, or if you have Blow of Bolus of Citadel out. That doesn't matter too much, you don't need a big hand. But in the case of Aether Flux, yeah, you can go off with stuff like that. Just drop a whole bunch of stuff, just get a combination of so many cards on the field with all these fairies and go crazy. Consecrate is just a great card. It's really the top end of the curve. It's a very low to the ground deck. So I think, in my personal opinion, it's just a great top end card to, if a game does go long, getting something like this out, drawn up to hand size. Yeah, you can get some crazy stuff going when you're able to drop 4, 5, 6 artifacts in a turn. When it comes to instants and planeswalkers, I really didn't see any additions that needed to be had here. You had basically everything you needed. Everything looked good. The planeswalkers are phenomenal, exactly what you want in this deck. And the instants, I guess the only addition I would think about would be maybe a Teferi's Protection, but again, such an expensive card. I don't blame you for not wanting to spend 40 or 50 or whatever it is now for one card. So I don't blame you for a second. But if you do have access to one, I would slot it in there. I just didn't bother throwing it in there because it's one of those that's so expensive that it's kind of just a staple and it's a lot of money. But if you do have it, throw it in there. But on to the sorceries, there is one addition I definitely wanted to make, and it goes back to that whole board wipe thing. It's Supreme Verdict. One, anything that says can't be countered is always, it's a lot of text that I feel like is super underrated. So many people have counter spells, so just being able to know you're going to get something out is phenomenal, especially a board wipe. And because this doesn't touch your artifacts, obviously your fairies are all going to be gone. But you have so many turns that you can drop so many artifacts. Rebuilding your little fairy army is not going to be hard at all. You're easily going to be able to get a whole bunch more out. So being able to, if someone gets too scary, yeah, again, you can have 20 artifacts out, but you might not have any blockers. So Supreme Verdict is great to get that little reset. And in all honesty, because you're so dependent on having so many other things out, it can set you ahead. Great card, and again, it just adds into needing those extra board wipes in there. Now, this to me is the most important part of this whole doctrine. When I mentioned it was a little malnourished a little bit, yeah, the lands is exactly what I was talking about. Originally, you did have 30 lands in there, and now I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me because I see so many people that play low-to-the-ground decks with 30, 31 lands, and it literally just gives me anxiety. I start sweating, I get really nervous, I don't feel comfortable. It stresses me out, man. I can't help it. I don't like it. I'm a land-heavy person. I play 37. I think the lowest amount of lands I run in any deck is 36. I have a Krenko deck with like a 2.6 average CMC, and I went all the way down to 36, and I still get stressed out every time I play that deck because if I don't have 4 lands in my opening hand, I don't know what is about to happen. I'm shaking, I'm sorry. Yeah, it gets me a little worked up. So in the rest of my decks, I'm always at 37, 38, 39. I got some 40 land decks that aren't even land-based decks. To me, the number one mistake I see players make is putting way too few lands in. Because it's just decks have even a deck that's low to the ground. I got the average CMC in this deck, I believe, down to 2.6. And even then, you still want lands. Because again, with this card draw we're adding, you're going to be able to play a bunch of cards. And just because you have a bunch of 1 and 2 drops, you don't want to only have access to 3 or 4 mana, you want to be able to have access to always hitting those land drops. And I understand you have lots of artifact ramp and there's lots of ramp, but to me, artifact ramp never takes the place of lands. If someone all of a sudden, if you only got 3 lands out of a whole bunch of mana rocks, someone can easily Vandal Blast and then you're just set so far back. But with lands, you're not, I don't think I've ever seen someone drop an Armageddon. Land destruction is so rare in EDH, especially. Now, if you get to see EDH, apparently I don't know much about it, but apparently it's more common. But yeah, regular EDH, you're not going to see much mass land destruction. So to me, nothing is more important than hitting your land drops. So I went way out of my comfort zone and put the land count all the way down to 35 in this deck, but that was as low as I wanted to go. I had to add those 5 extra lands in there. Hitting those land drops is so important. Especially, I do see a lot of games that you win in this deck can be won with your commander. I know it's not the focus, but being able to get those fairies, a bunch of 1/1 flyers, that adds up so fast over time if you keep poking people. So definitely, if you do anything, if you don't like any of the suggestions, if you do anything, please up that land count a little bit. Because the only time you want to be running a 30, 31, 32 type land count is if you're in a super competitive type deck that's trying to win so fast that you're not worried about land drops. And again, with Alela at the helm of the deck, I can still see it being a strong deck, but I don't see it being the type of deck that you're winning turn 3, turn 4 every game. I see it being as more of a fun storm deck where you're trying to get value throughout the game and then get that crazy turn where you storm off, and you definitely want to be hitting your land drops for that. So definitely, biggest piece of advice are definitely going to do with these lands. I didn't even add fancy lands. I just threw some more basics in there. You want to be able to hit land drops. I would start with 35, but even then, if you notice you're not hitting land drops, I think because you're so low CMC-wise, you don't need to go any higher than 36, but I would say between 34 and 36 is going to be that sweet spot. You don't want to be all the way down at 30 just because, yeah, not being able to draw lands means you won't be able to play cards, and that never feels good. Now it's time for the top 3 things I want to prescribe to make this deck as healthy as possible. Now, if you notice a lot of these additions, I'm not really trying to change your strategy or anything at all. The deck seems fine. I literally just, the stuff I'm trying to change is essentially just to add a little bit of a level of consistency. The way it looks to me, and obviously you can let me know, Will, from experience playing the deck, it looks like you might have some problems with consistency just with some lower card draw and the low land count. So upping the card draw by a lot, upping that land count by a lot should add to more and more consistency with the deck. You could even, I didn't go in this direction, but you can even go and add some tutors and stuff like that if you do need to get that Aether Flux or that Bolus' Citadel more consistently, if you want consistency like that. But as a player who doesn't really run a ton of tutors myself, I just love throwing in all the card draw and having all those lands, because then you know at the very least you're consistently getting to play your deck. Alright, so without further ado, the number 3 thing that I would go ahead and add to this deck is Bident of Thassa. Bident of Thassa is a phenomenal card, and like I said before, this leads to explosive turns. This is going to go ahead and swing with a bunch of fairies, draw a bunch of cards, drop a bunch of artifacts, make a bunch more fairies. This will let things get out of hand so fast, and I love this idea because when I've thought about Alela, again, I haven't put any deck lists together for her before this, but never did I think a bunch of low mana artifacts. It's genius because you can just drop a whole bunch and you can end up with so many fairies out of nowhere. You can literally have a hand of 7, 1 and 2, and 0 drop artifacts, and out of nowhere just have an army of fairies. And that is awesome, man. With this card, it can really get out of hand. So that's the number 3 thing I'm going to prescribe. The number 2 thing I'm going to prescribe are just those lands. Get those lands in there. I know it's not fun. Whenever I'm making cuts in the deck, my first instinct is, I was like, do I need 38 lands? Do I need 39 lands? Believe me, from experience, every time I cut lands from a deck, it's so easy. I always end up regretting it. Just try, and even if you just do it temporarily, try with 35. If you don't notice any difference or you somehow end up with way too many lands in hand, you can cut them. But just give it a try, and in my personal experience, I've noticed so much consistency with my decks. Very, very rarely do I ever have a game where I feel like I don't get to play. And that's really, to me, that's the most important thing. I don't care about winning so much. I don't care about, I just want my deck to be able to do things a lot of the time. And I feel like land count is one of the biggest factors for that. So definitely. Number 2, go ahead and up that land count. And I would love to hear some feedback on how and if that changes the way the deck plays at all. And then number 1, without a doubt, is going to be Sensei's Divining Top. Divining, I can't speak. It's one of the 2. Divining sounds much fancier, so we're going to say Sensei's Divining Top. And this is here for essentially the 2-card combo with Bolus' Citadel, where you can just go off. Sensei's top just allows this deck, and I think every deck should have something like this, where if a game gets to hour 3, hour 4, it won't end. It's just going on and stalled board states. You need something that's just going to end it, and this little combo with Bulls of Citadel is awesome, because then you eventually do make your way to Aether Flux and just woohoo! Like, that's the worst gun noise ever, laser noise ever, but you know what I was going for. Whatever noise in Aether Flux Reservoir makes. That's a good question. I guess it's more like a zoom. We're going to go with that. Whatever that noise is, that's what you're going to do to everyone, because you're just going to be Aether Fluxing everyone in the face. It's really cool win con, and it is, again, it'll end those long games. I don't recommend just tutoring for it right away, just murdering everybody with it every time, because, again, you could become the target, but it's a fun thing to have in there just to end. You know, games got to end, and sometimes you need an explosive way to do so. This is a great way to do that. All right, but yes, that wraps it up. Will, definitely let me know what you think. It was a blast looking through this. It was just so much fun getting out of my comfort zone. I don't play artifact-heavy decks necessarily. I really don't go storm decks. I've never built a storm deck, and I had to do a lot of research, and it was just so much fun. I had a blast. It was so hard for me. I said this before, I love token decks. It was so hard not taking this entirely in the token direction. I was literally just pulling myself back. I kept wanting to add, we can add an anointed procession. I had to fight it. So I took out most of the token suggestions I had and tried to stay true to what you wanted. And it was a blast. I really hope you enjoyed the take on it. Yeah, definitely let me know what you think. It was so much fun to do. As always, a huge shout out to all the patrons. We love y'all so much. We really appreciate all the support. It's insane. This is why we like to do these deck doctors. It's just a small way we can give back and show our appreciation. But yes, some more deck doctors, deck tech, crazy stuff coming soon. Be ready. But until then, I will see y'all next time.